wanted to ask a military person who served in combat, were you ever like scared that you might lose a limb and your life would be changed forever?
I walked through those scenarios a lot. I've written my own funeral.
What do you mean, written your own funeral?
Like if I was killed, I already had all my arrangements made in a letter. That's like, if I die, this is going to tell you everything you need to do. Like my obituary, everything.
Okay.
I've war gamed that a lot.
How do you war game that?
That's a term I use. It's like brainstorming. Okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I would think about what if I lost an arm, a leg, an eye, whatever.
Okay.
It's like, well, it'll be a challenge, but it's like I don't see myself rolling over and giving up.
Wow.
I like your little studio.
Yeah, thank you. This was this is the first time I'm doing it in the studio. So,
Okay, cool.
by the way, your guest number 10. This is
Okay.
quite an honor, sir,
Okay.
that you're here. 10 is a milestone for me, I guess.
Okay.
It's kind of a big deal. But in the past, I had those two big, like those. I call them Big Joes, but they're basically bean bags.
Yeah.
And so I had several guests on them, them people sitting there or the other blue room that I have.
Okay.
And this is the first time I thought, okay, we'll, try something else out, try to make it look a little more professional. In any case, we'll see how it goes. So I'm thankful that you drove all the way from Galesburg.
I don't live in Galesburg anymore.
You don't?
Live in Edelstein.
And
That's if you go on.
you said Elstein?
Edelstein.
Elstein.
If you take 40, which is Knoxville.
Knoxville, yeah.
North 12 miles, you'll see a sign that says Straight Matter Road. You get Straight Matter Road 2.5 miles, you come to a T intersection, right at that intersection.
Okay. So you're not too far away then?
No, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a lot closer than it was from Galesburg.
And is that where you're going to permanently live, or is
Yes,
that
yep, that's a new change of address as of a few months ago.
Okay, because Gail was mentioning to me that it was a big family project you guys are working on, and
That's what's occupying my time now.
nice.
All of I probably work more now than I do when I was getting paid.
That's the one thing I want to get into, like right off the bat with you, Tony.
Okay.
Is that, you sent me an email. I read through it and I read through it and I read through it again and again and again, and I had to sort of double take a few things because you're like 35 plus years in the military, another 30 years in the post office, started a church and started a school and have your own businesses. And do you have like 2x the time that everybody else does?
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
But some of it was out of necessity. I didn't plan on starting a church or a school. It just evolved.
Okay.
And then it was like, again, I didn't ask to be in charge, but it was kind of like, hey, why don't you be the president? Or why don't you be in charge of leadership committee? It's just like, okay. So, and the business I did was solely mine. I did that for about 10 years, just as a side hustle for more money.
Okay.
When I was working at the post office. There was a time when I worked, basically, there was a 10-year span where I worked 3 jobs, a 20-year span where I worked 2, and then, of course, almost a 40-year span where I worked continuously. So, yeah.
Just all the time. And I was going to say, the reason they probably tapped you on the shoulder to start all these things was because you were an upstanding, member of society. And
yeah, there's a kind of in those instances where you need a type A personality. You need somebody that's kind of pushy and somebody that's pretty focused and will take the lead and do a lot of the groundwork, a lot of the hands-on. And so that kind of falls in my...
So you consider yourself a type A personality?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. I'm probably way off the chart on that one. You could ask it. My family would tell you that too.
And how did you gain that type A
I
personality?
think that's hereditary.
Okay.
My mom had it.
Okay.
My uncle had it. And they call that the Kentucky gene, which is my mother's maiden name.
Okay.
So that's just kind of an inside family joke.
Okay.
But
so you just feel that kind of the drive to take charge, take leadership, and get after things.
it's a pretty simple philosophy for me: lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Okay.
And I can do any one of the three. What drives me insane is when people can't make a decision and they're kind of in the way. Now, if you want to be in charge, that's totally fine. I'll follow right behind you,
Yeah.
as long as things are moving along. But when people, and it's funny because my wife says, I want to get it right. And I said, well, we all want to get it right. I said, but sometimes by not acting, you get farther behind. Colin Powell, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he said, and this is on the military side, but I think it's very applicable to business. He goes, if you don't make a decision by the time you have 80% of the information, you're already behind the power curve.
Before you have 80% of
The information, if you don't make a decision.
What's the power curve?
The power curve would be you've already missed your turnoff, basically. That's a military jargon.
Okay.
It's kind of like, oh, there was my turnoff back there. One of the things that paralyzes, and I've seen it in the military with so much information coming in, we have an insane intelligence and capability to pull in so much information and so much data from real time to human
Mm-hmm.
to satellites to imagery and everything,
Yeah.
that it paralyzes them sometimes because they have too much information and they're going like, oh my gosh, and the information keeps coming in. So you have to kind of weed through that. So, like I said, in a nutshell, for me, it's like the same thing when we started the church and we started the school. It was just a group of parents that said, hey, we need aid, got together and it took off, and the school right now is running over 300. They purchased one building. They're in the process of purchasing a second building over by Knox College for a split campus, because it's either there or they have to turn people away. Every one of their classes is full, so they're doing real good. So I'm good in that interim. I'm good in that physical. Come out here and help you pour concrete.
Uh-huh.
That's where I would excel. Technology-wise, sitting at a computer,
Yeah.
guys will put me in prison. I'm the kid in the classroom that was always doing this, looking outside. What time is recess? What time is recess? Because I was just constant motion. So.
Gosh, Tony, there's so many points along the way. I wanted to just pause you and expand on those things. But even what you just said, maybe I'll work backwards here.
That's okay.
So even when this very anecdote you mentioned, you're looking out the window and stuff like that. Like, so you knew in your heart that you're not. I guess you're cut out for a certain kind of a job.
Correct. Yes.
And that requires a lot of hands-on. And this is how old were you think, when you realized that?
Probably single digits.
Wow. And your parents never said, hey, go get a better grade or something like that?
My mom always said, she preached this to us constantly. She goes, whatever you do, she goes, I want you to do basically three things. Whatever you're going to make a living at, I want it to be legal and honest.
Uh-huh.
I want it to be something that makes you happy, and I want you to be the best at what it is. And she goes, if you want to pick up trash, be the best
one
out there, And so that's And so that's driven my entire life.
Okay.
And I've had spirited conversations with union members because I've been accused of making them look bad. I work at the post office, and my retort was, you make yourself look bad. And I told them, and I feel this way, when I came out here and helped you and Gail with the concrete,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you maximum effort. As a friend, if I volunteered, if I got $1 an hour, $10 an hour, $100 an hour, it doesn't matter. You will get the same effort from me. It's not driven by money. It's driven by the fact that when I walk away from that, I go, I did the best I could. That looks really good.
Wow.
And if it doesn't, I'll tear it apart and redo it. Because it's the other thing my parents were big on. They always said, you only got one name. Don't ruin it. And Trisilla's not a common name. You can look in the phone book. There's not many of us. You know? So those were the things that were just instilled in me and my brother and my sister, my cousins as well. You know, that whole generation, that they infused that to us. And I can look. I have a cousin who's he's retired now, I think, full professor at MIT. Got another one that's got a doctorate. My daughter has two bachelor's degrees, a master's degree with 2 proficiencies, speaks 2 languages. My other daughter is an APN with a master's degree, works in the emergency room. So the second generation, by and large, most of them took off third generation,
Right.
and expounded education-wise because they went into a field that required it. One of my peeves is, and I've seen a lot of this in the last 30 or 40 years, you have to, education with a purpose. Some people go to college because that's what they think they're supposed to do, or
Right.
their counselor told them.
A lot of people.
Well,
Growing up in India, that was the only reason why you went to get a degree or something, which is like, you have to get a degree. That's just the box you got to check.
And it's okay if it's useful. I mean, how many people get like a degree in humanities or something? I have a degree in some specialized. One of my cousins has a doctorate in history, and he ended up working in an insurance company. So see what.
How is it useful?
Yes, if you're an engineer, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're someone that requires a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, a doctorate.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to pause this music.
Sure.
I was experimenting with this, thinking, this is a bad idea.
Hey, that's how you learn.
Yes. We were talking about usefulness of education.
Yeah. And that's a big thing that, and I mean, I still see way too many people get a degree and they don't apply it to anything. Or it's not a useful degree. You know, it's like a degree in humanities or a community organizer or anything. I'm like,
yeah.
What? I guess the first thing is, what's your goal? What do you want to do?
Right.
What is it that you want to do? And then I think you go after it that way. The few times I did, I got like 3 semesters of college. I got like a year and a half. I originally went for criminal justice because I was going to be a police officer. And ended up, post office given a test. I took the test, got hired, and I'd rather work than go to school. But at the time, there was a big switch where if you were going to get into law enforcement, you needed a 4-year degree. Now, that's rolled back. They're accepting associate's degree. My feeling is a 2-year degree that concentrates on that is what you need. When they add things like music and art appreciation and stuff, that I don't see how that's applicable to be a firefighter or a police officer.
Yeah.
In some of those instances, And I know they want the well-rounded individual, but let's face it, if you're not into it and your heart's not there, you're just like, what do I need to do to pass this class?
Right.
So then it's kind of a waste, and then the people that do want to pursue art, I'm just in their way. basically, it's like, why should I clog up the class?
Right,
So,
right.
anyway, that's,
I mean, there's I love that mindset, by the way, because it's like, I mean, this is the Idea Sandbox podcast, right? Like, so that is an idea I'm imagining that you grew up with. So be useful when you grow up. You learn something, use that to create something that's useful for humanity, yourself, whatever. Go ahead.
It's interesting in how what you just said was so true. When I was growing up, we did dishes, we cleaned the bathroom, we did yard chores and everything. That was just part of the family unit, and you just did it. So I can remember, and some people may take this the wrong way. I didn't. When I was 7 and 8 and 9 years old, I helped my mom clean the bathroom. And it wasn't like we did that all day. I helped her do it, and then I could go out and play, And she liked it because I'm small and I have little hands and I can get in places where she can't, But at the same time, she taught me, she supervised and said, no, do this, try this, use this brush, use this cleaner or whatever. The same thing, she taught me how to do laundry, she taught me how to cook, I learned some carpentry stuff from my dad and some sports. So anything we picked up on, that was just knowledge that we gained. So you fast forward 40, 50 years, and I have a cleaning and maintenance business that I did. And I had, at my peak, I probably had 10 reoccurring contracts where I cleaned office buildings, doctor's offices, dentist offices and stuff. But what I learned when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, I put to use,
Right.
So, I mean, and it's in some, again, my mom would say, you're going to make your living one of two ways, either with your back or your brain. And that sounds kind of harsh.
Yeah.
But it's like, I know what I want to do. I want to work with my hands, whatever that is. So that's where my pursuit is going to be.
Yeah.
And along the way, you're cerebral as well, because you have to figure out what you're doing. And some of the landscaping I've done, some of the home improvement projects I've done for both my daughters, you get into, you're like, you have to think through it.
Yeah.
It comes with experience, but then you apply it, and voila.
Yeah.
They appreciate it, because it's like, I know you're saving me thousands of dollars. And I said, that's okay. That's not. My daughters.
It's just a dividend that you have because of the experience.
I have it. Now, let's take it a step further. I have 4 grandkids now. My oldest will soon be 5 this fall. This number 2 will be 3 coming up shortly. 3 boys and a girl. The 2 oldest boys will follow you, follow me, follow their other uncles like they're joined at the hip. And if they're changing a tire, changing oil, they want to do that. My oldest, Lincoln, who will be 5 this fall, if you gave him a choice to go to Toys R Us or Lowe's, he would go to Lowe's every time.
Wow.
He will go into the tool department and he can name probably 3/4 of the tools that are there and what they're used for.
How do you guys wean them away from screens or?
My daughters, both my daughters, I didn't grow up with video games, neither did my wife.
Yeah.
And our daughters didn't either. So naturally, they're like, I don't want them to be in front of a screen 8 hours a day. Now, they do let them watch some videos, but that's very controlled.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can watch Fireman Sam or Blippi or whoever for 30 or 40 minutes, and then that's it. Or if we're taking a trip, they have a little iPad, they may watch some videos on there. But the most part is, so far, every one of them rather be outside or be doing what we're doing, whatever that may be. And the two oldest boys, you can take them outside and sit in a pile of dirt. They'll play in that pile of dirt for 2 hours with their trucks and their shovels. And the things they imagine and come up with is astounding to me. But they're always asking questions. And the other thing that we've never done is treat them like babies. You know, they'll say, "What is this? And what does it do? And why do we do this?"
Yeah.
And we explain it to them. And the cool thing is, they will stop and they'll do like this. And you can see the wheels turning in their head, and they're trying to absorb this.
Right.
And it's so much to the fact that grandson number 2, which is Liam, he'll name all the dinosaurs, and he'll correct you if you get them wrong.
Wow.
Lincoln will do the same thing with tools. No? Mimi? That's what he calls my wife. That's not a backhoe, that's an end loader, or that's a bulldozer, or that's a crane. And so it's going to be, to me, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do when they get older. Will they pursue an engineering degree? Because they like to work with their hands and build things, but I think they can take that to another level and be an architect, be a designer, you know, because they have...
Think abstractly and things like that.
Yes, I mean, but that's what they rather do. They rather do that all day long than...
Yeah, that's one of the things my wife and me, I would point out over the years. You know, my wife and me would go out to restaurants with my Indian friends and their kids and all of that, and Emily would point out that, you know, notice how this is very self-incriminating about my nationality, but nevertheless it's worth mentioning that they get talked down to, the kids get talked down to, and it's like you're treated like as though you don't have the intelligence required to understand what I'm trying to explain to you. And then I notice a stark difference with American kids. They're sat down with the rest of the adults, just like normal adults. They're sitting in their booster chairs, whatever, and they're spoken to in a very adult-like manner. And that is very new to me, or new for me culturally speaking. Because then you're saying, well, what do we do, blah, 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 you know, X, Y, and Z, and then the kid would respond in whatever level they could, and it becomes sort of an expected thing that I ask you an adult question. It's not just an adult question, it's just a question, and I expect an answer that makes sense and is reasonable in the context of what we're trying to talk about. That's very new, and I wanted to point that out. And then you're talking about, this is next level, which is, not only would you treat them like adults and expect a adult-like answer, but it just sort of it seems like it also actively works on their personalities, right? Like they're growing up to be adults. They're thinking for themselves, and they're kind of making sense of the world without being talked down to, as treated like a kid, like, hey.
Well, and the other thing it does is sometimes they come up with questions like, where did you come up with that? You know, for instance, just in the past 2 weeks, my oldest grandson, Lincoln, just out of the clear blue, asked my daughter, so where did the baby come from?
Yeah.
You know? And she's like, well? And then grandson number 2, who will be 3 here in the fall, he was taking a bath, and he looked up on the wall, and my daughter's house is very well decorated. She did it all herself. She can do it professionally. And she has, it's a modern farmhouse is the decor. And so she had 2 sheet metal silhouettes up there. One was a man, one was a woman. And so he's the same thing. He's like, so did Owen, his younger brother. We got him from the hospital? You know, it's just things out of the clear blue, and you're like, okay, what sparked him to think that? But at the same time, I think it's because when you try your very best to explain it to them and break it down to them, I'm working on a retaining wall at my youngest daughter's house. So my oldest grandson, he lives in Virginia, and we FaceTime probably every day. He calls almost every day. He said, so what were you doing today? And I said, well, I'm building a retaining wall. Well, what's that? So I take him outside and I show him, And I said, this is a retaining wall. And of course he sees all the tools and the wood and everything. And I explained how I did it. And, well, what does it do? And I said, well, do you see all this dirt up here? I explain everything like that. And he's like, he takes it all in. And he's corrected my oldest daughter on more than one occasion when she got something wrong, when it was in regards to home repair, construction, tools.
Wow.
It's just like, but he absolutely loves that. When he went to Lowe's, he had to try on every backpack leaf blower. And it's just like.
And how old is he again?
He's not even 5. He'll be 5 this fall. He's been to so many fire departments, I don't even know, because he's all about police, firefighters, construction, because he loves the equipment. So I took him to one, and they said, okay, buddy, do you want to, and as soon as he comes in, he goes, I want to see your jaws of life and your bolt cutters. The firefighter looked at me and he goes, I don't think I've had a specific request like that. We went to another one, he goes, I need to see your gauges, like on the pumper truck. And he goes, and he's showing him stuff, he goes, yeah, I know you. And he's telling him, yeah, these fold down and then you can climb up there and you can get the hose and stuff. And it's just like, but we always say, young kids, their hard drive is clean. So they pick up everything.
Yeah.
Everything you say, everything you see, they pick up on it and they record
Absolutely.
it. It's there.
Absolutely.
And of course, they're young minds and they're sharp.
Yeah.
So their ability to recall things is.
I would say even from the other side, like, the flip side of it is like something I've experienced, unfortunately, and this is something, a quick tangent here, is that when you say they'll pick up anything, on the opposite is also true. If you break them down and if you tell them they're stupid or you're worthless or which I got told a lot, and that became the the script. Yeah, it's a script that followed me through for a significant part of my life. Even if I had successes along the way, it just always felt like it was by accident, by luck. So I chalked everything up to luck and just this happenstance thing. That I did well in college because it just happened because it happened, and I just worked hard this one time. It never occurred to me that yes, I'm capable. I can, if I apply myself, I can get after things and have success that I want in my life. It was always just this. It felt like there was a blip in my timeline.
Yeah. And it can be. I mean, I 100% agree. It can be very damaging if you don't. If you're constantly beating somebody down, then they're going to walk around like this.
Absolutely.
I don't.
Yeah.
Now, you can't give them false hope. It's like, hey,
right.
I mean, a battery doesn't run on 2 positives or 2 negatives.
Right.
There has to be positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement when it's justified. And you can't reward bad behavior, but it's like, oh, okay, so, and like my mom and dad would say, things I excelled in school, I was really good, loved science. I was good in science and history. English, that's my Achilles to this day. Spelling, writing, deep sentence tree diagrams, all that stuff. It's like, that is not where and as far as math goes, I've learned more math along the way doing construction.
Yeah.
And because you have to figure things out.
Right.
And it's applicable. It's not, I'm just learning something on the chalkboard. It's like, okay, now I know 22 and a half, 45. I understand that much better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to add to what you were saying. Like, I had a data scientist guy on this podcast a few months ago, and we were making the same exact point, is that inverting the whole education system in a sense that when you have a problem in front of you, when you have to solve a problem, you have to develop a product, or explore some new area, something like that. That's when you get those circuit ways in your brain get exercised, right? Like, why do I have to know force equals mass times acceleration?
Right.
Because of this reason, because you want to calculate, your velocity, your position of your machine, and blah blah blah, and then it all. And the point I was trying to make was that you're sort of emotionally invested at that point, because you want to solve a problem. You have, it's not all these abstract things on the wall, on the screen, or sheets of paper. It's actually leading you to somewhere. So therefore, you're more curious. You want to find a way to learn that thing.
You're more vested in it.
Right,
100%.
right.
And it's. I have I notice things a lot, and so if we go somewhere, I notice not necessarily architecture, but construction, and I'm like, cool, that's a great idea, I never thought about that. How somebody used a product that was not intended for this, to this, I'm like, that works like a champ.
Pretty clever,
and it looks
yeah.
good, So that kind of stuff is, like they say that necessity is the mother of invention, that how you figure things out. Take it back a generation to my mom's dad, and my mom would always tell me, she said, oh, Grandpa would be so proud of you the way you figure things out, because he did the same thing. And like I said, all four of my grandparents migrated to America at the turn of the century. They all came from Poland. And
were they all Polish?
yes.
Okay.
And now Trisilla is not Polish because they dropped some of the letters off the back of it, which was common when people came during the turn of the century, because everybody was discriminated against at some point by
really?
their own people.
Okay.
Perfect example.
By your own people? You said?
Or in particular, my grandpa lived in Chicago on Homer Avenue, Chicago proper, and he used to walk to Navy Pier to do work. And so when he first got here, he was, there was more workers than there was jobs. So every day, guys would come out and they'd line up, and they got a clip or going down the line, Specken Sie Deutsch, Specken Sie Deutsch, Specken Sie Deutsch. And he's like, no. So after 4 or 5 times, a guy comes by, Specken Sie Deutsch, he goes, yeah. So okay, stand over there.
That's speaking German?
Yes.
Yeah.
But he doesn't speak German. He speaks
Okay.
fluent Polish.
Okay.
He had some broken German because they lived on the Prussian-Polish-German line.
Uh-huh.
And so, went over there, kept to himself, did his work. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and the guy comes by, he goes, you're not German, are you? And he goes, no. He goes, it's okay, you're a good worker. So he broke the stereotype that's like, I'm only gonna hire Germans, and it's like, okay, Walter can work.
The hustle,
Yes,
yeah.
Walter can work, and we're gonna keep him, And at the same time, the ethnic neighborhoods that were broken up in Chicago probably still exist today. You had your Polish neighborhood, your Italian, Puerto Rican, whatever it was, and pretty much everybody stayed in those communities because it was community, and most of them were bilingual, and especially the ones that had just migrated here, didn't speak English, so there was comfort in that. But it's a two-edged sword, because their own neighborhoods and their own population, when gangsters got involved, would prey on their own people. They would go after their own neighborhood and their own ethnicities first.
How come?
Just because they knew them. They knew everything.
Okay.
They knew the ins and the outs of the culture and everything.
Okay, yeah, makes sense, yeah.
So it's like, I pretty much see that globally.
Yes,
it's like the first ones that you exploit are your own people. And I'm like, come on, guys.
Isn't that so ironic? I don't know.
Isn't that what history's supposed to teach you, not to do this again?
Don't screw your people.
Yeah, it's like, man.
Look out for each other.
Yeah. So anyway, that's.
Okay, so good to know that's not just. That's a common sentiment in the Indian circles too. It's like you're just busy screwing over each other. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's like,
You know? Help
yeah.
each other out.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I get basic human nature. I said everybody falls prey to it. They think.
Yeah. I mean, don't screw over anybody, first of all.
Exactly, but really, your own people? You know, it's like, come on.
Going back to the other point, the thread that I felt like you opened up was that, you said your mom, you would work with your mom. Mm-hmm. You were a kid and you would clean bathrooms and stuff like that. And, one of the things I grew up with was that it was a very, I don't know, classism is the way to put it. It was definitely a classist society I grew up in.
Okay.
So people who did certain jobs were
looked
down at and belonged to a certain class. And so me as a middle class spoiled little brat would, doing bathroom cleaning and all of that was just, that was just below you.
And that was along that same line. My mom and dad would not tolerate that.
Okay.
It's like, you don't know that person's background. You don't know what maybe this is all they're capable of doing, but they're doing something. They're not sitting there with their hand out begging.
Right.
So don't sell them short just because they're doing something you wouldn't want to do, whatever that task may be. So that was always instilled in us as well. Just because, they're doing, like you said, cleaning bathrooms or doing manual or menial, we think menial labor, raking the yard or cutting lawns or anything like that. It's like they're making an honest living, and if they're happy at what they're doing, then what's the problem?
And it's quite, would you say that's just like by and large that's an American sentiment, right? By and large?
I think so. I'll make this comment. I don't know if I've been to, I lost count, probably 24 or 25 foreign countries.
Wow, okay.
And I've been to 46 out of the 50 states. And what I've seen in all of my travels, U.S. internationally, is basically everybody wants the same thing. They want to be left alone. They want to be able to work their job, and they want to be able to raise their kids. I've seen that everywhere. War-torn country. That's, to me,
common.
That's common throughout the globe. So it's like, why don't we just do that then?
Yeah. It begs the question, like, if everybody wants the same sort of thing, then what are we squabbling about? Then why is all this kind of pain and consternation and pain and all this? Where is it coming from?
And sometimes, is there profit in making us
right
against each other? I don't know, but it's just like, I mean, in Afghanistan, I would see kids when it's January and it's 25 degrees out, standing in a puddle of water with no shoes and socks on, wearing a long sleeve t-shirt, and I could see that their feet are like, got a little bluish tinge to them. And they wave at you and smile, and we'd throw them some candy and some stocking hats and stuff. And the next day, they take those stocking hats down to the market and sell them. No, that's okay if that's what they need to do. But you know what? And I used to say all the time, I said, you know what? When the stock market crashes, it doesn't affect them at all. Because it's so simplistic.
Right.
Their existence, I don't want to use that sounds negative. The way they live is the way America was 200 years ago, where you worked hard every day to have a home that you could heat and have enough for you and your family to eat. And they're not distracted with all the things, the internet's down, my cable's down, you know, and we get wrapped around the axle about those things. That, you know, when in the grand scheme, was it that important? Now, I know internet and that is business driven. Some people working from home, they need that.
Yeah.
You know, that's their livelihood, and I don't mean to diminish that, but sometimes we get fat, dumb, and happy sitting at home eating at McDonald's and playing video games and watching Tosh .0 or something. You know? It's like, do something constructive, you know?
Since you spoke about your military, or you opened up that topic, I guess. So, Were you involved in direct combat, or what kind of roles can you talk about some of that?
Yeah. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17. Actually, I went to see the recruiter when I was 15. He said, come back in a couple of years and bring your parents.
Okay.
And so I did. My parents had to sign. I graduated high school at 17. They signed for me because I wasn't 18 yet. And the agreement was, my mom says, yeah, I'll sign for you, but you have to finish high school. I said, I intend to finish high school, which I did. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps.
So the Marine Corps, just can you unpack what the Marine Corps is? Like, what is the job of a Marine Corps person?
The Marine Corps is, some people call it naval infantry. The Marine Corps, it's been around since 1775.
Wow.
So they are a very small, compared to the other branches of the military, there's less than 200,000. Most of the other branches are in the 400,000, 500,000, 600,000 personnel. So it's smaller. It's smaller by design. It's much quicker and easier to move a unit because they're smaller and not as big as some conventional Army units. During World War II, they did all the Pacific campaigns. Their primary objective was beach landings from the sea to take specific objectives, the Marshall Islands, Tarawa, Tinia, Guam, all of those.
So you get transported via ships,
Yes.
these warships, and then you get airlifted to.
You go onto a smaller, what they call a mike boat,
Okay.
which, the front drops down when you get to the beach. You climb down a cargo net from the big ship, you get on a smaller ship, that's how you get to the beach.
Okay.
Now, fast forward 60 years, they still have that capability, but a lot of it's coming in by helicopter or other type of air assets.
Mhm.
They do still have that beach capability, but they are an offensive force rather than a defensive force. So
Okay.
they can hit and hold objectives, but they're really not designed to hold objectives long term. It's kind of like a spearhead. So they're overwhelmingly, the Marine Corps is centered around the riflemen, the infantrymen that's out there doing. What I always tell people, the difference for the Marine Corps that the Army and the Air Force maybe doesn't understand is the entire Marine Corps exists around that infantry rifleman. Everybody is support to him. Where the Army doesn't see it that way, the Air Force doesn't see it that way, the Navy doesn't see it that way. But that's been instilled in Marines from the time they hit boot camp through their entire career. They understand that all the air assets and everything else exists for that 18, 19, 20-year-old rifleman that's actually doing the ground combat.
Is every Marine person a ground
It's a
rifleman?
rifleman first.
Okay, so
You're taught that in boot camp, and that's what's different from the other three branches. The Marine Corps spends 2 weeks on the rifle range. The other branches don't do that. So you'll hear it say every Marine is a rifleman first. And that is the mindset for them. You may have another job, but you know how to function in a ground combat environment because you've been trained to a certain level. Now, you're not going to have the expertise that those guys that do it full-time for their job, but you're not a novice either. Doesn't matter if you're a cook, baker, or candlestick maker. You know how to dig a fighting position. You know how to fire a rifle. You know how to do some rudimentary tasks that an infantryman would do.
and can you operate other defense equipment too?
Yes, depending on what your job is. It's pretty specialized, compartmentalized.
Okay.
For a reason. But that doesn't mean that you can't cross-learn some stuff, just like you would any other job.
Right.
I've learned things from other guys that's not my job, just by simply asking, hey, how does this work? Or how do you do this? And they go, And most of them are like, oh yeah, sure.
I'll show you,
I'll show you,
yeah.
because they like to show what they do too. you know.
Right.
So you pick up things along the way. So the 6 years I spent in the Marine Corps, I was 1975 during the fall of Saigon in Vietnam. We were there doing the evacuation of Phnom Penh.
So you served in Vietnam.
I was in the territorial waters.
Okay.
I have Vietnam service ribbon. I was not physically on their property, but we were close enough to see what's going on.
Okay.
We did, because at that time, they were in a total evacuation mode. They had already decided,
Gonna wind down this war.
It's 1973, they had the Paris Peace Accords. They gave back some POWs. The Vietnamization program is what they called it. It's all going to be up to the South Vietnamese now. Of course, that didn't work out. So our mission was to obviously evacuate American personnel, the embassy and all that. And at the same time, people that were helpful to us. I don't want to say sympathetic, but they maybe worked with U.S. And then you had literally thousands of refugees trying to get out too. So we did that, evacuated those people, ended up literally, there were so many people standing on the surface of the ship, that's all you could do is stand. I mean, and these people basically are, everything they have is like rolled up in a grass mat on their back. And they are fleeing the country in fear of their life.
So these were Vietnamese people that you were
Yes.
also evacuating
Yes.
back to the United States.
Most of them, we set up refugee camps in the Philippines.
Okay.
Lots of them. And then that pretty much ended our phase. I know they came in and they started doing vetting these people and medical assistance. A good number went on to the United States. Some stayed in the Philippines. They went out throughout the world, depending on, because just like with Afghanistan, the other one, some of them said, yeah, we can take 1,000 refugees, or we'll take 100 or whatever, to give them a second chance. The other thing that happened in May of 1975 was the Khmer Rouge, which was Pol Pot's, seized an American vessel. And our company, along with two other companies, were the ones that were tasked with taking that vessel back and the ground combat that ensued in Kontang Island. So after I got out of the Marine Corps, I had a 5-year break in service. I then joined the Army Reserve in Galesburg. I spent 13 years in the Army Reserve, and then I switched jobs. I got out of the Army and I joined the Air Force because I got bored in the Army.
How so?
I had climbed the entire ladder from E1 to E9, so I was at the highest enlisted grade I could be in the Army. I was a sergeant major.
Okay.
And so basically when that happened, they took me out of doing fun things and put me in a desk. And I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I was 35 years old at the time, and I was like, I can't. This is going to drive me insane.
Yeah.
So I started looking for something else to do. It was a goal that I had to reach that rank, but it was also kind of a disappointment when I got there, because I was like, oh man, it's like, the difference would be like going from player to coach. I don't want to coach, I still want to be a player. So there's that transition there.
Yeah.
So I left the Army on one day and I joined the Air Force on the next day. I took off 3 stripes, so I went backwards 3 pay grades.
Wait, what does took off 3 stripes mean?
Because when I left the Army, I was an E9. I was at the highest enlisted grade. The Air Force wouldn't take me at that. They would only take me as an E6. So I had to come down 3 pay grades.
Okay.
And I said, that's fine, I don't care. So I did. It took me 13 years, but I got them all back. So I retired as
I'm sure.
the Air Force. So, but I needed to do something more fulfilling.
Yeah.
And so I retired out of the Air Force about 6.5 years ago.
I mean, again, there's so many things I want to get into. Like that to me, like the fact that you reached the top there, most people would aspire to get to those roles because it's prestige, it's status, it's an indication that you're worth your salt, you've gotten there. Most people would just sort of, coast at that point in that role, and then you had obviously the courage of your convictions, but also the drive to be a doer. You wanted to do things, like, and you knew that. But like, how did you overcome I don't know if the impetus is the right word, but sort of, I'm assuming that's how the majority of people in the military army aspire for. They want to get to E9, and then they want to probably be there or go higher up than that, be in the administrative roles and stuff. But would you say you were an outlier in that sense? Like, you actually wanted to do things and stuff?
Yeah. I don't know, there's probably not too many people that have been in E9 in two different branches. And I see what you're saying exactly, and it is an oddity, because it's like, okay, to get to that E9 position, it's going to take you 16, 20, 22, maybe 24 years to get there, okay?
Wow.
And so then when you get to that point, like you said, it's like, okay, I should be set, But
yeah.
I couldn't sit still. I mean, that was, again, this is me. I'm going like, what are we going to do next?
What can we work on? Yeah.
Yeah, what are we going to do? This is driving me crazy. And they were like, no, you can't. This is what you have to do now. And I'm like, ah. So I immediately started looking for another career path, because I just couldn't sit still.
Yeah. Would you say that you find it very fulfilling to actually work on things, and that sort of, like, applying your mind, your creativity, your mental, all your mental prowess and all of that, like that, like, pushes you forward, motivates you?
It's a good question. It's rewarding to see the results, and by that I would say, I don't know if I told you this too, but I coached for about 10 years too. I coached soccer, baseball, and basketball.
No, you didn't.
The similarities.
Among other 35 things you've done in your career.
The similarities between that and the military is being able to help somebody, mentor somebody, tutor somebody, and then see them go on to be successful. Like basically taking them under your wing. Like seeing, I could think of kids that I had that were like very awkward and clumsy when they were in 5th and 6th grade, and then you patience and you work with them and potential, and they were in 9th and 10th grade, and I'm like, it's what you're leading for, and it's just like he put in the work, but you took the time and the patience, like you said before, not beat him down. Well, you're never going to be anything. Just go sit on the bench, And the kid just went through a growth spurt to where he literally was stepping on his own feet. And he was uncoordinated because he had this growth spurt. Well, then when the rest of his body caught up with him, now he's a force to be reckoned with. So to be able to have a hand in that, or militarily when you're mentoring and training and people watching you 24/7. So the biggest thing is, you can talk the talk, can you walk the walk, and vice versa. Are you going to tell me this, but you're doing this over here? And when I'm telling you this, and they see that you're doing this, it's like, okay, I might pay attention to this guy because he's consistent.
Yeah.
He's not telling me don't do this, and then he does this. So, and it's rewarding as you go up and as you retire and stuff, and people will say like, I want to be like you, That's scary and humbling, and it's like, I don't know if you really know, I've watched you, and you've kind of inspired me to do X, Y, and Z, and hopefully your kids see that in you as well. So that's, so I guess the shorter answer is, I just go back to the basics of where whatever I wanted to do, I wanted to do the best I could at it, And then the byproduct was other people picked up on that or saw that, and it maybe motivated them, you know. So it's the same on a sports team. If you know, do you want to be outworked by the other guy? No. You start working hard and harder and pushing them, it's gonna push the rest of the guys too, because they're gonna be like, I don't want to be outworked by this guy, you know. So there's a motivation factor. When I went,
how do you overcome laziness in that context?
sometimes you can't. Some people, and we have another military saying, I'd rather go short than stupid, meaning if I'm supposed to have 12 guys on my squad, I'd rather have 9 I can count on than 2 or 3 deadbeats. Militarily, in the past, I can't speak now because I've been out almost 7 years and things have shifted. Those people probably weren't around after 1 or 2 terms. Because you either get the message and you get on board with it, or they throw you on the scrap heap. And militarily, it's a lot like a sports team. I guess the thing I liked about military life is you 100% get out of it what you put into it. I like the Spartanness of it, the fact that you don't have a lot of stuff.
What's Spartanness?
It's just a Spartan lifestyle that it's just like, you don't have all these luxuries. It's just like, you know, there might be 50 living in a barracks in one building, you know.
Spartan is the Roman warrior.
Yeah, it's just like
lifestyle.
You just, like basically everything that you had, you pick up in a backpack and a duffel bag, and that was it.
And you took pride in that kind of a lifestyle.
Yeah, I like that because it's very minimalistic. You know, it's not like when you move, you have to worry about moving the whole house. It's like, no, you grab this and this, and all your stuff goes in, and if it doesn't, well, that's not their problem.
How did you never succumb to like peer pressure and things like that, where your peers were probably accumulating material wealth and all of these other things?
It comes down, it's discipline. It's 100% discipline. I know, I give you a perfect example. When I was, the 4 years I was on active duty in the Marine Corps, I sent 85% of my paycheck home every 2 weeks. I sent it to my dad, and he put it in a bank account for me. And I kept like, now we're talking the 1970s, so I kept $50 out for 2 weeks because I had a place to stay, didn't have to pay rent. They had a dining facility, I had to pay for food. I was responsible for my laundry and if I wanted to go out to eat. So I had no expenses. So after 4 years, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went to the Jeep dealership, paid cash for a brand new Jeep. Never had a car payment. Because that was my goal, was to accumulate that money. And a lot of guys don't. And they will do the same dumb things. Payday after payday after payday, and wonder why at the end of the year, they don't have any money. So the thing I found out about peer pressure, another anomaly for me is 38 years in the military. I have no tattoos, no piercings. I've never took a liking to coffee or alcohol. So I'm like the odd man out, literally. But what you'll find is, you know, you'll catch some heat and some flack early on. It's just like, whatever, dude, I'm not doing it. And soon as you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to stay on that path or you're going to wilt and you're going to give in to them. And after a few weeks, they just leave you alone because it's like, well, it ain't working on him. You know, it might work on somebody else. But I would take that back to the way I grew up and what was instilled in me. You know, my parents always said, you always do the right thing, no matter what the cost is. Whether somebody's looking or not, you do the right thing. If the boss isn't here, doesn't mean you lay down and take a nap. That means you keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. And you won't have to come up with reasons why the work wasn't done. You know, so.
Yeah, and it also probably would you say that like you're trying to grow yourself, you're trying to evolve and grow and understand about yourself and things like that, like, and you can't cut corners for that, like you have to put in the work, right, like I don't know,
I mean, it'll catch up with you in time if
right,
you do,
right,
because it'd be like cheating on a math test, okay, or math homework. Well, when the test comes out and you can't look at your buddy's paper, well, now it's going to come out. So the same thing happens. I can remember when I first started working at the post office and as a letter carrier, and when you first get hired, I don't know if it's 90 or 120 days, you're basically on probation. You have no union protection or anything, which means like they can cut you loose at any time, So there was 3 or 4 of us, and so the boss would come by and say, you need to do X, Y, and Z on these routes and everything. And we're like, except one guy is like, well, no, seriously, take a break.
Okay.
They let him go. So see, it catches up with you. It's just like, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, you're on probation for 3 or 4 months. Why would you do that? Why would you even?
So they are that strict it's a government enterprise, a federal government enterprise, right? And there's strict rules enforced in terms of performance of the employees? It sounds like.
Well, don't confuse that with long-term. That's like when you're a first hiree.
Yeah.
You're in that probationary
period.
And then there's standards, but it's hard to enforce those. Because some stuff is like a lot of gray areas, not a lot of black and white. So it's kind of a moving target, and there's people that have done criminal things, and it takes them years to get rid of them. Which is frustrating and sad, because then it gives the whole organization a black eye.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so that's, no, that's not the way it is. But because it's a federal job and because it has union protection, it's so hard to remove someone, even when they're, doing things that are unscrupulous. But I've known.
But would you say by and large it runs smoothly, the whole company, when people get their mail regularly, obviously, and
I've been out of that game since 2009. I retired early out of the post office in 2009.
Yeah.
So I could pursue full-time military again. And they're like everybody else. They're struggling to get workers and good ones. And they go through budget cuts and everything, and I know in Galesburg at any given time there's probably 3 or 4 routes that don't have a regular carrier just because of things they do. And the oddity with the post office is they have to pay all of their health benefits up front, and no other federal entity has to do that. The other non-incentive is if the post office, has a $2.5 million surplus one fiscal year, they don't get to keep that. That goes back in the general fund for the federal government. So there is no chance to build up a reserve or a war chest for when they do have some hiccups. So it's quasi. They're really not. They try to run it like a business, but some of the rules and regulations, they're handcuffed to what they can do. So it's hard for them to turn a profit when they have some of those things that would take literally an act of Congress to change that. So
how do you decide to work for the Postal Service as a letter carrier?
They basically, my dad just told me when I was going to junior college, he said, hey, their post office is giving the test. He said, you ought to give it a shot. okay, so I did. I went and took the test, and I took the test in January, and it was like November. I just figured, well, I just forgot about it. They said, no, I got hired off of it, so I was like, oh, okay. Again, I'd rather work than go to school. So that was an easy decision for me.
Were you in the, sorry to interrupt you, but were you in the military at that point?
No, I didn't go back into the Army Reserve until I hired in the post office in December of 1979, and I went back to the Army Reserve in August of 1984. So I had a 5-year break in service there. So when I first started at the post office, I was not in the reserves or the Guard or anything like that.
How'd you like the letter carrier gig?
To me, it was fun and it was easy because it was like the incentive was they come by, they bring your mail. It's like you put it up in the case, you pull it down, you deliver it, and as long as you're getting your work done, they'll leave you be. So it's a lot more complex now because they have to scan everything. Everything's barcoded, and it's like, I mean,
like manually scan?
Yeah, they have a handheld scanner that they take with them, and they'll have to.
Every piece of mail?
No. They will have scan points along the route.
Okay.
So that's more of a way for them to keep track of you. But like you have to scan your packages and your things that require signature.
Sure.
You're scanning those things too. So, if you have 20 or 30 of those a day, that takes extra time. You're just not going along, putting the mail in the box, you gotta stop, knock on the door, nobody's there, scan it, gotta fill out. So that kind of slows the cog down. And then they're really bombarded with a lot of parcels now because so many people do things from home, and then they get drop shipments like from FedEx and UPS will drop stuff off at the post office, and then the post office will do the final destination for them. So it's
So I'm curious about the one point you made. Do you have to scan things along the way to show that you're actually doing your job? Like where do you have to scan the thing?
They will put at certain points on the route. There may be a collection box, there may be a business.
Okay.
And you'll see maybe on a door jamb a barcode.
Okay.
And they gotta scan that.
Do they track you on GPS too and make sure that?
UPS they do. I don't know about the
They
post
do?
office yet.
Okay.
I don't think they have them on the vehicles yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's different from, and when I hired in the 70s, from what the older guys said too, it's changed, maybe not in a good way, because it used to be like in the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s. As long as you're cleaning up your route every day, they left you alone. And then that wasn't good enough, And then they got more controlling or restrictive. And I'm like, then I always say that they took a fun and easy job and made it not fun and more difficult. But again, not everybody wants to, I've had people, when it's 100 degrees out and matching humidity, not many people would do that. Or when it's 30 below and the wind chill's 70 below.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people want to be outside and do that, but see, I would do that all day long. Yeah. I mean, that's just for me.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. I mean, some people,
Yeah.
So.
Can I switch topics with
Sure.
you with the Army, military, Marines, Air Force, the whole, that whole thing is fascinating to me. So when you said you've been in combat and things like that, what is your mindset, Tony? Could you walk me through, so let's say you go to Iraq or Afghanistan.
Into both.
And when you land there, you're in the midst of an escalating conflict, something like that, and you've got a mission to, I'm guessing, I by the way, this is way out of my comfort zone, so you could correct me at all places. Can you walk me through like there's so much. There's an air of like there's this air of I don't know. There's war brewing at the moment, I'm guessing, and then you have to mentally prep yourself up, physically prep yourself up. Like, what can you walk me through the mechanics of the whole process when you get into that? Starting at the United States, you board your military plane and then taking off.
Okay. My experiences have been, you usually have a fairly long lead time of knowing when you're going to go. Because the Pentagon has all of the active duty and all the Guard and all the reserve units, and they're tracking all of them. And, somewhere 10 pay grades ahead of us, they're watching this and they're massaging this, and we'll know a year out, 18 months out, that we're going to Iraq during this time, or Afghanistan during this time.
Okay.
So that...
and this is way before even the public gets to know.
Right. And it will be, and that's what will drive your training cycle then. So you know that in 18 months or 12 months or whatever, we're going to Iraq, we're going to Afghanistan, Syria, wherever the case may be. So there is an entire outline or program of things you have to do along the way that DOD has directed. And there's certain training venues you have to go to that are geared and specifically for what theater you're going into. Like NTC, which is a northern training area in Fort Irwin, California, they have about as realistic villages set up there as you can find in Afghanistan.
Okay.
They even have Afghanis that play the part.
Okay.
Because they were people that have immigrated over, and so now have jobs. So it's like, that's about as real as you can get, because they know the language, the customs, and how you're going to interact with them, and the hearts and minds, basically. And it's not just a World War II where here's the bad guys, here's the good guys, here's the DMZ, and we go to point A. This is a complex.
Mm-hmm. So
you'll go through all of these things, from your rifle marksmanship to your physical fitness to, in the meantime, you're getting your physical, you're getting all your shots, making sure that you have your will and your everything to the point to where you're pretty much covering every possible angle of that. So you'll get closer and closer to that, and in the meantime, they're figuring out your departure. We would fly out of Peoria to Baltimore on military aircraft, and then from Baltimore to Kuwait or Baghdad or Bagram or Kandahar, you would take what they call a rotator, which in some instances is a military aircraft, and sometimes it's a contract. So you will fly in there. Your equipment's probably left a month before you, because a lot of times bigger equipment will come in on ship to a port, and then it'll have to be transported to your final destination. Smaller things we put in container boxes and flown in. So when you get there, your equipment's there. Now, a lot of times you get your equipment's not there yet. So that kind of messes things up, because when you come in, there's another unit that you're replacing them. And so they've already been there for 6 months or a year or whatever, so they're like itching to go home, and they don't want to hear that you don't have your equipment yet. So, but it happens. It's not in their control. It's not in our control. So there'll be usually an 8 to 10 day overlap between the incoming unit and the outgoing unit, just to bring them up to speed on everything that's happened in the area. And as time goes on, a lot of people are on their third, fourth, fifth deployment, sixth deployment, so they already know.
How long does each deployment last?
It depends. The more specialized the unit, any of the special forces stuff, usually those are 90 to 120 days. They do shorter, but they do more. Army National Guard, they get mobilized for 2 years, and they will spend a year deployed. And the other year was spent leading up to that, doing all their training and get all that stuff taken care of. And then by law, they're not allowed to be retasked for 5 years after that.
Retask meaning
go back again.
Go to another.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now on the Air Force side, we did ours probably averaged 6 months. They tried to stabilize them or keep them no more than 9 months, 270 days is what they try to keep that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's kind of what that genre looks like. So your deployment could be, depending on the unit, 90 day, it could be a 6 month, it could be a year for that.
And how is your mindset at that point? Like I'm thinking, were you seeing your comrades or the unit previously losing a bunch of people, equipment blown up, things are not going your way? Like, there's a clear possibility that something could happen to you or your unit, what have you. What are you telling yourself? How are you working up to that? I mean, I'm assuming there's a little bit of, I don't know if there's fear is the right word, there's a little bit of trepidation of the whole situation that's unfolding.
It's going to vary with each individual.
How do they instill courage? Sorry to interrupt you. How do they instill courage in you guys? Like, is it just courage is like inbuilt in?
Well, the thing is, and it's not always that way.
Okay.
There were during the first Iraq War, there were guys in the 82nd Airborne that said, "Oh, wait a minute, I don't want to do this." I'm like, I signed up for the college benefits. I said, "Well, you better read your contract." Because this is, basically when you sign a contract with them, your collateral is your life.
Wow.
Because they're going to tell you where you're going to go, when you're going to go, how you're going to go, and how long you're going to stay there. That's the contract you sign. And so I've talked to a number of parents, they said, "Hey, my son or daughter's looking at going in the Army." And I said, "Okay." And I always tell them this. I said, I'm going to tell them my personal experiences, the good and the bad. I will not talk them into it. I will not talk them out of it. I will answer openly and honestly every question they have, and that decision is up to them. Because they, sometimes I said, I'm not going to talk them out of it. I'm not going to talk them into it. Okay, so it's something that you want to do, heart, mind, body, and soul, or don't sign up. Now, the crazy thing is, pretty much most of the guys, we volunteer to go back. There's a lot of us that say, "Okay, yep, we got a shortage, I'll go again."
And that's just patriotism?
It's just I guess you could call it that, but it's like, this is what I chose to do, this is what I signed on to do. And, some guys do 1 or 2 deployments and say, "I'm good." I know guys that have done 6, I know those guys that have done 9. I've done 4. That's pretty average for our unit, was about 4. So it's just like, well, this is why I joined this unit, was to do this job. So, and like I told my wife, and she, when I went to my first deployment in 2003, and she told me months later, she said, she was mad at everybody. She goes, "I was mad at George Bush, I was mad at God, I was mad at you, I was mad at everybody, for this." And she said this at a women's group that she was speaking at, and she goes, and then about 2 or 3 months into it, when I was gone the first time, she goes, "It finally clicked for me, God's telling me that this is the reason that you married him because of his character and everything that he's portraying now is what drew me to him.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, then it was like, okay, lifted a weight off my shoulders, as she puts it. And the way I explain it is, and this may sound crazy to some people, but it's like the Super Bowl for us. You know, we've trained...
Going to the combat situation
Yes.
at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you trained your entire career to get to this point, and when the big game comes, nobody wants to sit on the bench.
Right.
Okay? So that's you could call it patriotism, however you want to brand that. It's just like, okay, this is what we signed up to do, so let's go do it.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think like the patriotism aspect of it. I'm curious about the patriotism angle to it. Why? I guess I don't know how to approach this question, but do you experience that sense that you want to defend your country, your values of the West, America, and what it means to you and stuff like that? Like, what is your idea of what America is or the West signifies for you that you want to defend?
Yes. I look at, and again, like I said, I've been to 24 foreign countries.
Mm-hmm.
I look at what we have and what others don't. And are we perfect? No. There's not a perfect government, perfect society out there. But the opportunities that it's afforded me and the way I grew up.
This country has afforded you.
That's afforded me. When I see with my own eyes the way other people have lived and the things that they don't have, it's real hard for me to understand people when they get angry because McDonald's didn't get my order right. And I'm like, really? This is what's got you going on right now.
Yeah.
When I see firsthand how other people live, and so yes, to defend the country, I said yes. It's given me everything that I had. It's given me every opportunity, as well as it has my parents and my kids and even my grandparents when they migrated, because if they would have been in a good situation where they're at, they wouldn't have left.
Right.
So why did they come here? Well, cliche, it's the land of opportunity. Do we get everything right? No. We try to. And again, it's felt maybe not the obligation, but it's just like, this was something I can get on board with. This is something I can get behind. This is something that, I'll write that check with my name as collateral to do. And never gave it a second thought. The downside is, and you don't see this, is the pressure that it puts on your family.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't know.
They don't know
what's going on. And I said, no news is good news. I said, if something happens to me, you're going to know real quick. So from, the pressure it put on my brother and sister, my two daughters, my wife, all of that stuff. And on a flip side, I always tell my wife, when I deploy, my life becomes pretty simplistic. Because I only have one job now. She's at home. She's a wife, a mother, a homeowner, a car owner, works, 2 kids in school. Who's going to cut the lawn? Who's going to shovel the snow?
Yeah.
Who's going to pay the bills? Not me. I'm not here.
Right.
So my job comes one-dimensional. Hers comes multi-dimensional. And unfortunately, we've been married, we'll be 40 years this August. Not a lot of people can say that. And I understand, unfortunately, how that can erode a marriage. And it takes my wife, an exceptional woman, to be able to withstand that, when you take your marriage vows before God and man, you said, I'm going to stand with him. And when you do, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And when I retired, my sister asked me, she goes, can you do me a favor? I said, what's that? She goes, can you total up all the days that you were gone? I was like, oh man. So I said, as close as I came up with in the 38 years that I had in the military, I was about 11 years.
Wow, all told, 11 years.
Yeah, if you take away, there was a total of 11 years, whether I was gone on a training event for a week or a month or whatever.
More than a decade.
There was 11 years total that I didn't sleep in my own bed. So it's kind of funny because it's like I said, we're coming up on 40 years, but I said, really, we've only been married 29. Because I've been going for 11.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons that you see a high divorce rate in the military. I think there's other factors in society. When I graduated high school in 1974, you'd have 30 kids in a class, there might be one or two kids in there came from a divorced family. Fast forward to 2004, when my oldest daughter graduated college, graduated high school, class of 30, and there were 3 or 4 kids in there that had the same parents. 26 of them coming from a broken home. So you got lots of pressure coming from different angles. So it takes a strong woman or man, because some women are deploying along with us. So it takes a strong partner for them to be able to stay with them through that, especially multiple deployments.
It's
tough.
Absolutely.
It's tough.
How'd you guys work through that? Like the amount of stress it puts on emotional stress, and of course you're going through stress. You're in a combat situation, and then in the relationship you're not talking to each other for long periods of time. I assume. Yeah,
it's pretty. The longer the war went on, the more you were able to get a Skype or something like that. But most of the time, no. It comes back to the center point for us is our faith in Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That's our anchor. That's our center point that we're both tethered to.
Okay.
And it's like whatever happens. I'm okay with it. She's okay with it. The one thing we're not okay with is divorce. And it's like, yep.
That's a very sorry to interrupt you, but thinking of divorce is like against the faith. It's you're breaching those values.
Well, and it goes back to what I had emailed you earlier. My parents were married for 63 years before my dad died.
Wow.
My in-laws were married for 63 years before my mother-in-law died. My sister's been married over 50 years. My brother's been married over 20 years. My aunts and uncles were all over 50 or 55, close to 60 years. So I grew up in that post-Korea, post-World War II nuclear generation where families just stay together. And for the good of everybody,
Right.
And I do understand divorce. There's been some divorce in our extended family. And people remarry and, they stay married for 20, 25 years. But it's just, it would be counterproductive for us to get, again, our faith is driving that. That's our anchor point. And so when I go deploy, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to me? I die. Okay? I've already made my peace and my commitment with God. I already know where I'm going when I die. So that's off the table. That is not a distractor for me. My focus is going to be, I do this like I've done everything else in my life, at 100 miles an hour, at 110%. And if I live to 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever, I'm not going to change the way I do that.
Yeah.
Because this is what's held me together for the last 40, 50 years. So I'm not going to abandon my faith and my beliefs. And so that's the anchor point for us. and for our daughters, you know. That's, so when I do deploy, like I said, my job is one-dimensional, you know, and basically you're working 12 on, 12 off, 7 days a week, the entire time you're there. Sometimes those expound to 18 plus hours, depending on what's going on, maybe 2 or 3 days on a mission, but that's all I have to focus on is my job. I don't have any, I know where I'm going because of my faith in Jesus. I've already made that commitment, and my wife is taking care of the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So all I have to do is what's right in front of me. And so that's what keeps me focused. And, you know, there is, other guys will understand this kind of a twisted sense of humor, of like when, you know, a rocket hits or something happens and like, that was kind of close. You know, there's this like morbid comic relief, you know. And sometimes you'll see that in war movies that are done well, that sometimes you say and do things and you're like afterwards, you're sitting around talking about, why did you do that? And you're like, you know, that's a really good question. I don't know why I did that, you know, but I think what helps close that gap and keep people focused is we've known these guys we're working with, that we've deployed with. And to this day, I'm still best friends with many of them, that we've done all the training, and we know everybody's strengths and weaknesses, and we make fun of everybody when they do dumb stuff. And it's like, so I have complete confidence with the guy over here, the guy over here, and the guy over here, and the guy over here. So I don't have to second guess what, you know. And it's just like, it's really like a championship sports team. I already know what this guy's going to do in this situation and where I need to put the puck or the ball.
Okay.
Because I know him well enough. We've done this 100 times.
So you go with the same group of people for deployments?
Yes. On the Air Force side, when we went, our group, it was always guys that we always knew. Okay. And then we were attached to an Army group that we would support. And usually... Was
that by design, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
When you get a tasking that you're going to deploy, and you know what Army unit it is, and usually they're ones in your state or Iowa, somebody usually closer.
Okay.
This marriage starts 12, 15, 18 months before you deploy. So what you do is like, okay, the command staffs come together, we meet, hey, I'm you, this, you know, we get to know each other. You know, we start wargaming stuff, we start going over stuff of what we can provide, what they can provide, what's expected of us, what's expected of them. And then rather than doing weekend drills by ourselves, we will go over to their unit, they may come over to our unit, and then you're starting to mold this together. So when you get there, it's not the first, you know, it's like, oh yeah, we've been training with these guys for a year now.
Yeah.
We've done a bunch of training exercises, so we already know what Smitty's going to do, what Joe's going to do, and how this is going to flow. It's like spring training, basically, in any sporting event. You know, you're already working these things out ahead of time, so when you get there, and you even know the area you're going, so you start studying the geographics and the maps and the intel reports you have access to, so you're already starting to infuse yourself with that. So it's like you're not coming into a new neighborhood. I mean, you know the main roads in and out. You know who the main bad guy players are already. You know who you're looking for. You know what their, what we call TTPs, their techniques, tactics, and procedures, and what our counters are going to be for that. So it's like, it's really, if you look at it like in a football realm, it's like they run this offense, we run this defense. So that's orchestrated out 12, 15, 18 months in advance for that. So when you get there, and the active duty is the same way. The active duty Air Force is married up active duty Army, and they've already worked together repeatedly before, so it's nothing new there for them.
And when you're doing this prep work 12 to 18 months ahead of time, you're also doing your day job.
Yes.
You're working full time. They're not letting up on the hours, anything like that.
Right. It'll be, you'll see, I mean, when I was at the post office, I pretty much spent all of my vacation time, all of my military leave, and I even took leave without pay in order to facilitate these training missions that we go, for a week, 2 weeks. And then the funny story is somebody posted a cartoon, and it's probably 20 years old, and there's a soldier standing there in front of an army truck.
Yeah.
And the sign on the side says, just 1 week in a month and 2 weeks in the summer.
What does that mean?
Normally, with an Army reservist or a National Guard person, you're only training 1 weekend a month at your unit, and usually 2 weeks during the summer. Okay, that's your obligation. Now there might be some other training that occurs with that, but the irony is, people are getting deployed for a year and a half, and so it's like, so I always ask my wife that, and she kind of like, that's kind of another inside joke, and I look at her and I go, hey, it's just 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer, right? She rolls her eyes and she goes, yeah, right.
Yeah. Awkward pause there. Another question I wanted to really get into is that when you get deployed, and presumably you're interacting with military forces from other parts of the world.
Yes.
Like allied,
sometimes, yeah.
Your allies and American allies and all that. Like, do you notice, is there something very stark you notice in terms of the mindset difference between the U.S.?
Yeah.
And can you talk?
Yeah, I can. It's interesting. Me and one of my good friends, we were subtasked to go to Basra and support the British for
This is Iraq?
Yeah.
Okay.
For about 3 weeks before the elections, they were coming up to the Iraqi elections. And just a sidebar, what impressed me, when people vote there, when they were voting in the early days when Saddam Hussein was removed from power, that in order to vote, people would walk 10s, 20s miles from one horizon to the other. And then when you get there to vote, you take 2 fingers and you dip it in the purple indelible ink that they use like to stamp beef with.
Right.
And that stuff doesn't come out for like a month.
Right.
It wears off.
Same
I don't
in
care
India.
what you put on it.
Yeah.
So these people, when they come to vote, and you have opposing forces that did not want them to vote, they're literally putting their life on the line to vote. And I want people in America to think about that. They're walking maybe an entire day to get to a polling station. They're going to vote, cast their vote, and they stick their 2 fingers in that purple ink for all the world to see that they voted, including opposing forces that do not want this election to happen. So they're risking their life.
Yeah.
So when you say you can't get out and vote, shame on you. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
It's like these people literally are risking their life to go vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so we were tasked down with them, 2nd Grenadier Guardsmen. No, right flank. And the British are very interesting because it was the 2 of us, and we were there to provide close air support for them because we had the radios and the technical capability to do that. They did not have any air assets. So we were with this company of British, and we would sit around the table, we talk about different things. We talk about politics and everything,
Yeah.
Some of them are like, well, I won't tell you what I really think of Bush. That's okay, you're not going to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, he did this okay, but some of this stuff he's a little crazy on this. Okay, that's fine. But the thing that caught me and my friend that was with me, Warren, is like, we talk about our history from 200 years ago, and they go, now 450 years ago, and we just like looked at each other and was like, wow, their history goes back 400 or 500 years. And ours,
or beyond that.
Beyond that. And I said, we're just infants, at 245 years, or at 200 plus years at that time, So that kind of just like, was kind of a reality check, like, well, you're really not the old man on the block now. These guys
Yeah,
are, you know.
yeah.
But their education, their professionalism, and their poise is very, very much still proper with King's English, you know. And so they understood a lot of our idiosyncrasies, but sometimes we'd have to explain some of our slang to them and some of the things we do. But they're a very professional force. I mean, we integrated well with them. They treated us from day one like one of them, and they really had good food.
Okay.
But they were. It was a great experience with them. So we would run into pockets depending on. We ran across French Foreign Legion before. Usually, maybe some Australians and some Canadians. British were the only ones that I was tasked to support outside the U.S. But given the theater, given the size of footprint we had compared to other countries.
What's theater?
We call theater, a theater of war would be like Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam.
Okay.
Or the European theater or the South Pacific. When I say theater, that's a military term for where the war is going on, that specific part of the globe.
Okay.
So, given the footprint of the number of people that the U.S. had compared to other countries, you were less likely to run into them just because they had a smaller. But, But we would occasionally and stuff, and and it's like kind of the same mindset as a lot of us, you know. You would trade stuff, and you talk about stuff, and they would ask you, you know, American football or soccer or whatever, you know, or somebody says, I've been to Denver, you know, and okay, you know, just a lot of curiosity there. And again, everyone we came across extremely professional. Most of them are coming from an entire, like ours, all volunteer service, so there's no draft
conscription,
or anything conscription like that there.
Yeah.
So, and most all of them are career. They have a much smaller force, but most of them are, I'd say 80% of them are probably career guys too.
And what about the experience you had with the local culture? Did you, like, I'm sure there's a big gap there, like, you know,
that will vary greatly. You can come into certain areas, as soon as you come in there, you'll get the vibe, whether they want you here or not. It's the same way if perfect example, if you're in the United States and you drive into the wrong neighborhood in the big city, like, you're going to know right away you don't belong there.
Right.
Whatever that subculture is there, the way they look at you, the way they react, and it's just like, okay. And pretty much, everybody picks up on that right away. More often than not, they were welcoming of us, but at the same time, this is a survival situation for them. And by that I mean, the British came there hundreds of years ago. The Russians came there in the 80s, and now we're here in the 2000s. So you put yourself in that perspective in your own country, you're going to do what you need to do to take care of you and your family, okay? So they know things that you don't know, and they know where there's weapons caches that you don't know. They also know that the U.S. will pay money for that information. So we have dug up multiple cache sites that were nothing of great value. Like, some of it's probably been there since World War II.
The cache sites meaning these are weapons cache?
Anything that they could use, weapons or bomb-making material. Some of that stuff's post-World War II, so it's been there since World War II. Some of it's been there since the 80s when the Russians are in there. But this is currency for them. This is like a crop for them. Because they know, hey, if you get X, Y, and Z will pay you $20 a rifle. And so they know where these things are at, or they bury them themselves, and if they need money, they'll say, oh yeah, there's some over here.
Yeah.
They'll dig up and they'll get some money for it. And the other thing is like opium, poppies. I mean, that's all runs amok there.
Right.
But that's like a cash crop for them. So that's not like in the U.S., totally different. And the funny thing is there were two of the guys I deployed with are cops in Illinois. So you get cops that deploy and they're like, wait a minute, they got opium. And the guys are like, all right, take your cop hat off.
Right.
It's a different country. That's not why we're here. That's their cash crop, you know. They would have bricks, basically, 1 kilo bricks of opium, black tar from the poppies, and that's how they fed their family, you know. It's like, okay. So it's kind of a weird dynamics there.
Yeah.
You would see nomads, which are basically nomadic tribe people with camels, and then you would find some small villages set up, and they have beehives and honey and other things they're trying to do, basically just carving out a living. But some of the ingenuity of some of the things that they did, they hired a local guy to come do some welding on one of the gates. He had probably a 1970 Toyota Land Cruiser, and he had welding leads underneath the seat of that were hooked to his battery. That's how he welded.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy cow. And he came over there, and it's like, he didn't have no big 225 amp Lincoln arc welder. He had, you know, and you would go through villages like that, and you'll see all of that. And then the other things that are weird, you'll also see all kinds of weapons of war for sale, because it's not illegal there.
Right.
So it's a different culture. And I suppose, you know, when we left, it went back to the way it was, you know. And in any conflict, good people are going to get caught in the middle. You know, civilians are going to get caught in the middle. It happened in World War II, happened in Korea. It's just the unfortunate, ugly side of collateral damage that these people, whoever they are, get trapped by both sides. You know?
Yeah, I guess one of the fundamental sort of ethos of the podcast, or the reason why I'm doing the Idea Sandbox, is, you know, to question these things. Do we really need war? If we, for example, had a cultural operating system like we have in the U.S., where, you know, things are fairly clean, you don't have bribery, you know, corruption in the lowest level of society, for example. These are things that put pressure on the common man. You know, the country that I come from in India, is corruption broad daylight. There's corruption caught on camera, like, you know, guys watching stuff they shouldn't be watching in the legislative assembly, just caught on camera, and they get to see another day in the legislative assembly and stuff like that. And it really bugs me, obviously, for obvious reasons, and I feel like some of that is just, we require a cultural upgrade. This stuff should not be acceptable. Yeah, absolutely.
It goes back to what I said before. Let's stop rewarding bad behavior. There needs to be consequences for those actions.
But even if, like, so, just to kind of bring the Indian context back again, it's like we the people have to do that, right? In a sense that we have to hold other people accountable. That means that the cultural operating system also has to have that value that, hey, you know, these some things you cannot breach. And then therefore you start electing people who represent those values, your values, and then they, and at the moment the way things have gone, and anyway, that's a whole different tangent I could take off and talk your ear off, Tony.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't know if you followed Indian politics at all. It's just this continuous mudslinging fest, and anything you bring up or anybody gets caught at the moment, any untoward accident, incident, something has happened, somebody's accepted a bribe or this or that, it gets slotted into, well, elections are coming up, that's why you're slinging mud. And it's like, no, I'm an average citizen trying to make my life. I don't care about the elections. Why is this happening to me? And that's one of the motivations I had to ask you that question is when you arrive at these, I guess, third world countries. Would you call them third world countries?
I would. Although I'm told that's not an acceptable term, but
yeah, I mean in the technical sense.
My definition is like can't drink the water out of your faucet. That's kind of. And I've been to.
It's a pretty good indication.
I've been to like 2 dozen countries that I wouldn't drink.
Yeah, and that should be unacceptable.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, it goes back. I think you're on the right track when it goes back to kind of a cultural decay, where there's not pride in what you do. How you work. There's not pride in your name. Talking to some friends the other day, and it's like I grew up in a time when, we would ride our bikes in town until the streetlights came on and we had to come in. But if we did something at somebody else's house, broke a window, cut across their lawn, and they came out and gave us the third degree, well, we got it twice because we got it when we got home too. And and you respected everybody's personal property in your neighborhood. That's what was instilled in you. You don't do that to other people's property. That is not yours. You stand there, well, my ball went over, look, don't let it happen again. That was put upon you to take responsibility for your actions. And unfortunately, right away, they always take the kid's side when they don't even know what the issue is, So there's that lack of accountability.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a tolerance for it when there shouldn't be. Rewarding bad behavior.
Yeah.
So what's the incentive to do the right thing then? If you're going to just let all this stuff slide.
Right.
And I think that other countries have done a good job with their election process and the fact that they don't allow you to campaign for 2 years. You can campaign for 2 months before, and the amount of money that is spent on anybody's campaign is absolutely insane, which I think there's a simple fix to that. It's like, all you have to do is say, here's the 25 questions that people want to know, or 10 or 15 or whatever, and you have each candidate there answer these 25 questions. You don't have to even put their party affiliation. Look at this list here, and whether it's crime, education, corruption, gun control, whatever the issue is, you list all those out, and you can give me your explanation, but then you're going to tell me, are you for or against it? Don't give me a political talking circle around it. You give me a definitive, you're for this or against this. And you publish that in every magazine and every newspaper, and it's on the internet, and people go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to vote for this. Okay.
Right.
But we sling mud as good as anybody.
Yeah.
In the U.S., trust me. I mean, and it's like, where does it end? Where does it end?
Yeah.
And it's just like tit for tat. Well, I saw you do this. Well, you do that. It's like 2 kids. Mom, he did it. Well, he did this. And it's just like, okay, so where are we at with that?
Yeah, we're definitely due for an upgrade with that whole process in the U.S. That is for sure.
And again,
it's gone out of hand.
Why do we have lobbyists?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. So there's a long list of that.
Yeah, there's so many things that And why do federal agencies have lobbyists? How about just do your job?
Yeah.
You know, you working for the lobbyists or the people?
Or the people that elected you? Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
These are the people that, and then when you do, like they've had over the last couple of years, parents finally got fed up with some school board meetings, and it's like, oh no, you can't tell us what to do. Actually, we can.
Yeah.
Because you are the school board, and you're elected to be on that school board, and we, the parents, say, we don't want this.
Yeah.
So it's like they got it flipped around. We don't work for you, you work for us.
Right.
And that's the key where they forgot. In all elected offices, they forget who they work for. And that's, like you always point out, the common man.
Yeah, one thing, there's a stark difference between India and the US in that sense that at least in the US you have sort of a balance of kinetic force power in the sense that people own guns. Like when it comes down to it, the government can't, the people can rise if they want to against violence. In India, it's it's almost illegal to own any kind of fire equipment. So firearms, sorry. And if the government wants to, this is probably, I don't know if I'm going to put this out on the internet, but I keep thinking about these things because it's like, well, the people have virtually no kinetic force at their disposal.
Right.
95%, 99% or something like that. So who has that? Well, the politicians have that. They have the police force at their, at their mercy, and then they have the military, and of course, so anyway, there's...
Can you really have a First Amendment without a Second Amendment?
Second Amendment is the right to bear arms.
Yep. Because it goes...
I know.
It goes directly to your point.
Right,
that's like,
absolutely.
Okay, and no one's advocating violence, but
right.
at some point you're going like, okay, this...
Right.
Look at me. Stop what you're doing.
Right.
This is not good. This is not working.
Right.
And like you said, you need a reset.
Yeah.
Here, guys.
Yeah.
You need to think of what you're doing, and the fact that you were elected to be there. And by the way, not as a career.
Yeah.
Term limits go
just
a long
to serve
way.
people, please.
Because if you go back to, the original founding fathers and stuff, they were here for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years or whatever. They went back to their farm. They went back to their business. But these people are like, oh, no, I'm going to stay here forever. Well, you're making
There's a lot of benefits to this.
How do you on a salary of $125,000 or $150,000 a year have multiple multi-million-dollar homes? How does that happen? I want to see your investment portfolio.
Right.
Where you get these stock tips from. And, come on. We're not blind and we're not stupid.
Tony, I want to get to that point you made earlier. Taking pride in your work.
Okay.
And that's a relatively new I'm embarrassed to admit this, but relatively new concept to me. Something that I believed in your personal brand. That's how when I worked at CAT as an engineer, that was definitely always, what is my brand? Am I dependable? Am I reliable? Do I have scruples? Do I act in a way that's honorable and so on? But taking pride in your work it's a different kind of concept, which is you really want to do the work to the point where you look at it with pride at the end of it, right? Is that the right, am I thinking about it right?
When I look at whatever that finished product is that I did, I don't want to be embarrassed by it. I don't want it to look like a bag of garbage. And I'm thinking in a physical sense when I build something or I fix something, and it's like, and my philosophy is like, and I'm pretty known for over-engineering stuff. If a 2x4 is good, a 2x6 is better. If it takes 2 10-penny nails, 3 12-penny nails are better.
But why? Is it the outcomes that...
It's if I build something or fix something, I want it to last 100 years. That's my mindset.
How'd you get that mindset?
I just do. It's just like, because I want to do it right the first time, and I want to do it one time only. That's why I like your metal roof.
That's my wife's uncle.
Yeah.
He takes pride in his work for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just...
But I don't want to downplay the fact that that is a very useful value to behold, because the outcomes are generally very robust. Like the country's infrastructure, if I look at America, for example, it's like by and large, this country has built amazing interstate system, bridges and airports and all of these things that just last. They're strong, they're robust, and my sort of takeaway from that is, these are people who took real pride in what they did, and that mindset you were talking about is like, I want this to freaking last forever. And I inhabit two different cultures in my world. Like I'm
Right.
Indian. I visit India quite often. I'm actually, in fact, going next week. But I also inhabit that world, culturally speaking. And you don't hear that as often. It's often overlooked and things like that. And the outcomes speak for themselves. The roads are not laid properly. I'm not kidding you when I say this. They're so routine this happens. There's a politician that's going to come to your city for reason X. And so the whole road equipment machinery kind of comes out. They start paving the road, this and that, right? Yeah. And then the dignitary comes and goes, and then within a week there's a truck. I saw this literally last week that's sunk into the ground. And I'm like, when are we going to call a spade and just have some pride in this, or shame, or all of the above? And how do we instill that in a culture? I mean, yes, it's one thing to say Americans have pride, but it also came from somewhere. Somebody held that value, or people in the millions hold that value as a value in society, which is not negotiable, right?
Yeah, I think, and I think it goes back to the core value of their upbringing, how they were raised. And being my parents were first generation born here. I was second generation, so that was so instilled from their parents to them, and now from my parents to me. And I think it's a natural human progression. The farther away you get away from that point, the more that can become watered down. Until we get to the point where we're at now, where it's like, well, somebody else will do it, or not my job. Used to drive me crazy, people would trip over stuff at the post office, wouldn't pick it up, not my job.
Right.
And I'm like, come on, man. If there's trash in the parking lot, like, if I'm walking right by it, I pick it up, put it in the trash can. Why not? It's not my job, but it's like, it's common sense, I've been known to fix bathrooms in a public restroom.
Wow.
And tell anybody, it's like, oh, it's running. I take off the lid. Oh, here he goes, pick this up. Done. I see it. I can fix it. Why not do it? I'm not looking for money. It's just broken. I fixed it, and it helps somebody. It helps somebody.
And you treat America as though it's your own house, in a sense. Then, right?
It's like, it's having respect of people's property, and treating things the way you would want your stuff treated. So again, I think the farther down the road we get from that to where we're at today, it's going to get watered down more, that work ethic and that pride in that. I had conversations with guys before about, when I was working in the post office, you go too fast, you make us look bad. I said, well, you make yourself look bad. Well, why do you say that? And I said, well, you guys hold like Walter Payton and Michael Jordan on a pedestal because of the way that they perform. And I said, and I agree with you, because they're putting in the work. Everything. They're putting in the work.
Yeah.
They get the results. He goes, well, they're making more money. I said, so you're driven by money. Well, yeah. Okay, then you don't have pride. Because like I told you earlier, I said, whether I'm volunteering for $0, $10 or $100 an hour, I'm going to give you the same workload. There's no dumbing down for me. I will not recede from what I'm trying to achieve in that job, trying to seek perfection. It's not driven by money. Because I said I had a business for 10 years that I worked on the side. And I would give people an estimate of what I do, and One fellow keeps going, he goes, can you give me a job that's not Trisilla quality, like them? I said, no, Bob, I can't. And I said, I'm gonna cut you a deal. I said, but I'm gonna treat your landscaping job like it's my own house. I just am. I'm not gonna cut a corner. If I make less money, I make less money. I'm not out to gouge people, but today, if I wanted to, I could work 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's work out there to be had. We winter in Florida the last 3 or 4 years, now January and February. I could get a job down there working 70 hours a week if I wanted to. Because willing, competent, reliable workers, there's a shortage. There's a shortage of them. They don't want people, show up for a paycheck or two and then they're gone. Can't pass a drug test, whatever the situation is, or are just lazy. So, drive around, help wanted signs everywhere. There's work to be had, but, you want to make $50 an hour, then better yourself. Get a skill, go back to school, whatever. You want to make $100 an hour, then make yourself more
worthy
valuable.
Of that.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly, because it's like, $15 an hour, working an entry-level job, how are you supposed to survive on that? You're not. It's called an entry-level job.
Tony, on that point, I've battled with that quite a bit in my career, at being an engineer, is that there's there's one school of thought that you have to hustle and play the political game to get above, right? And then I always my dad had a factory producing carbon brushes for motors and generators, so he had a factory producing things, and I grew up around that. And he would always say to people, how's business going? He would say, well, if I don't show up, I don't make money. That was his kind of quick thing he would say. And so I always instilled he instilled that mindset in me, and I took that to a corporate environment. And then you would cross paths with people who would have that other mindset, which is like, hey, you got to play the game, the political game or whatever, to get ahead. And my thought was, well, if I'm worthy, if I'm putting out good work, if I'm reliable, if I'm producing results, then people will take notice of this, and then they will promote me to the higher levels that I'm capable of, let's say, or can take on bigger challenges. It was always at odds with this kind of, I was in odds with that, and I still to this day struggle with that. Like, what you're saying makes complete sense to me. That is the way it should be. Is there an element of self-promotion in there? Maybe there is, but it seems like you have to be a doer. You have to put things out of that are of value fundamentally. That's the thing that stands on itself that people will pay for. Everything else is just vapor. You just at some point it's going to catch up with you, like you said earlier. I don't know. It's just like I struggle with that. I really, really struggle with that, and I could not. There were very few people that, to America's credit, or maybe Caterpillar's credit, in this case, where when people would look at the work that I'd done, my previous project, I'm presenting to this person or that person, invariably I would get a tap on my shoulder and say, hey, we've got this next challenging project. Do you want to work on this next thing? All right, I'm there. And then the next thing, and then all right, I'm there. And you would get all the other benefits too. They would recognize you for that. But out in the public, when I'm working, like you mentioned, you were talking to other people, like there was this, I don't know, it felt like that was not appreciated as much, just a struggle.
Yeah, I understand that. I see exactly where you're coming from with that. And I think it is, and it's like you said, it shouldn't be that way. And I guess, sometimes you can be taken advantage of because you're...
Yeah, how do you know that point?
You're still,
right?
It's like, oh, okay, well, I think some indicators are, you have a frank talk like this thing. So am I maxed out here? Have I hit the ceiling? Or, maybe I don't fit into your clique or whatever it is that you have, and see what their answer is. At the same time you're working doesn't mean you can't be putting resumes out, because I look at, I gave you, it's kind of a word analogy, but it's like Tom Brady wins 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots, couldn't come to terms with them, goes over to Tampa Bay, wins another one.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, who still had the mojo?
What's the common denominator?
Like, okay, well, maybe he still did have some gas in the tank, and you go on to another business. That used to happen a lot in the car industry back in the 60s and 70s. You would have guys from Ford to a GM or vice versa because they were like, okay, they're poo-pooing my ideas. I know this is going to work. I just want the chance to do it. And somebody takes a chance on them. Somebody takes a chance on them. It's refreshing when somebody does, whether it's business or sports or something, and I've seen people actually verbalize this. I would like to thank so-and-so for taking a chance on me.
Yeah.
And he gets to that championship level, and that they didn't forget, you gave me a chance, and you're the first one I thank. Thank you for taking a chance on me. The advantage I had when I did my business, and I probably underbid a lot of jobs. My wife says, you don't charge enough. And I said, well, I don't need it to live. I said, this is just extra money. And she kind of rolled her eyes and everything, And I had people tell me, you need to charge more. And I said, okay. But I was selective in the jobs that I took. And I knew the clientele that I worked with, when they say, could you do this or fix this? I said, yeah. And they said, okay. They never asked me for a price or a quote because I've done enough work for them, they know I'm not going to gouge them. Or if I ran into something weird, I'm like, we could do this or this, and it's going to probably cost this or this more. Okay, whatever. So there was that trust factor in there. And as far as, I guess I would underbid and overperform, which is probably not a good business model, but I had...
But you always guaranteed the business.
I did guarantee, probably only one job that I didn't get that I did. And they wanted me to wax tile floor, and I was like, I probably wouldn't do that. And these are the reasons why. Anyway, the advantage I had when they were doing office buildings, doctor's office, dentist's office, and everything, and I said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. You tell me what you need done. You give me the key. I'll come here after hours, and I'll clean your entire building. And then, if you want to hire me, this is the price. If you don't, you owe me nothing. You got a free cleaning.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And only one time in 10 years did they not take me up on that.
Wow.
I waxed their floors like they wanted to, and they said, we're going to go a different route. Okay, that's fine. And I said, because they're kind of like, they gave me this kind of like, what's the catch on that? And I said, there is no catch. I said, the reason I can do what I do and charge what I charge is it's not my primary income. This is extra income that I choose to do on my time. So the only way for me to give you a good bid is to do this one time. Then I go, okay, it took me 90 minutes or it took me an hour or whatever that I can, then I said, then I can give you a fair bid. I'm not gouging you and I'm not undercutting me. And they're like, well, that kind of makes sense.
It's just smart, yeah. It feels like even if this was not your side gig, that would be a smart tactic to use. Like, hey, just hear me, just watch, look at my work. It will speak for itself.
Yeah.
I'm very confident that you will hire me back again.
Yeah, and then, and you got a couple jobs from people you knew, and so then I had some references, and people contact them, and I was fortunate enough to do work for several doctors, so that was like, that kind of upped the ante a little bit as far as, yeah, he did really good work. I hired him again to do X, Y, and Z. But yeah, it's kind of like, the worst case scenario is you got your building clean for free for once.
Yeah.
You know, what do you got to lose?
Right.
And like I said, and if we don't, and I know the one I didn't get, no animosity. I said, okay, that's fine. I said, that was the deal up front. I said, you know, if you change your mind,
Yeah.
you know what I'm capable of doing, and let it go with that.
How do you, like, do you have a mechanism internally to detect when you're being taken advantage of?
Yeah. I have some pretty good perception there. On my business side, when I had the business for 10 years, I didn't really run into that because most of I didn't really advertise at all. Mine was word of mouth and friend to friend said, hey, well, Tony can do this, or why don't you ask him if he'll do this. So mine was pretty, and that was the biggest advantage I had is I didn't have to take anything and everything. And that's why I didn't advertise. Mine was word of mouth from friend to friend or acquaintance to acquaintance that somebody says, yeah, you don't want him to do this because he's going to do a good job and he's not going to rip you off, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like, how about in the military? Like, was there ever an element of that you're being asked to do some things that?
No, it's kind of a different animal.
Yeah.
It's a different animal in the fact that
everybody's just doing what needs to be done.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's just because the deal there, you're salaried by your rank, so it's not like you're getting paid hourly. So it's like, okay, whatever we need to do, we do it. And if you're in a good unit, and if you have a good group of people, which I was fortunate to have, probably overwhelmingly the majority of my career, is like, if I get done doing my stuff, then I'm probably going to help you get your stuff done so then we can all go to the gym or go watch a movie or whatever, rather than I got mine done, I'm going to sit here and watch you for 2 hours, you know. So that's part of that kinship and that camaraderie and that friendship that's like, well, I'm not going to screw my buddy over. You know, I got done early and I'm going to help him because I know the next time he'll probably, the roles reverse, he's going to do the same.
Right.
So that kind of negates that, but like you said, it's like, you have a task and everybody just needs to pitch in to do whatever to get that done.
Yeah.
And so, you know, many hands make light work, as they say. So.
Cool. Tony, we're coming up, I don't know, coming up on 2.5 hours or something like that here. And we've covered a lot of ground, and I think I got to most of the things that I want to get to, at least in the first installment. How do you teach yourself all these things? Like you've gone from cleaning to cleaning to landscaping to like a wide range of things.
Okay, I guess I could sum that up because people ask me about that.
Yeah.
I say, my mom taught me and Dad taught me many of these things, and the Marine Corps refined it even further with the attention to detail of cleaning, of organizing. There's another skill set that I have that's, people look at it and say you're OCD. I said I may be. But another thing that I do is I can organize your garage, your basement, whatever it is.
What about the Marines enforces that or gets it?
They take it to another level because you're constantly having a uniform inspection, a wall locker inspection where all your uniforms are, a gear inspection of your rifle, your helmet, your tent, whatever it is. And so that, it's almost like, you know, being a fireman and the fact that they come back from a fire, the first thing they do is clean all the equipment and put it back so they have it ready the next time. So all the tips that, and all the things that my mom and dad taught me about cleaning and working in the yard and all that, the Marine Corps just took that to another level. They just like do this kind of professionally in a sense. And so they had a lot of tips and secrets and stuff that would help you do that. But the key thing was the attention to detail of the way they did things. And so if you want to stay out of trouble and stay on the good side, you pay attention to the small things, the attention to detail, which that's that's the core of it right there. Attention to detail on things. I notice things like in somebody's house, their light switches, if I see all the screws aren't going the same way. That's what I see that. I see that stuff because that's been 38 years. That's attention to detail has been ingrained in what we do.
And would you get in trouble if those things?
Oh, there's negative. They don't reward bad behavior.
What would they do? What would the worst thing that happened to you if you?
It depends on where you're at. If you're in boot camp, then it's like you're going to spend a lot of time in the dirt pit doing all kinds of extracurricular physical activities.
So they will punish you to the extent to which you're screwing up.
Yes.
Continuously.
Yes.
Wow.
That's so. If you want this, they say, if you want morale to improve, stop the beatings. But it's like, that's the peer pressure of it too. It's like, dang it, I don't want to be on that negative side. So you're going to learn by your mistakes, and you're going to get more in tune and paying attention to that. Case in point is the last job I had in the Air Force. I was what they call a JTAC, Joint Terminal Attack Controller. We're embedded with Army. I'm in direct communication with fighter aircraft that are dropping bombs on a target. Okay? I'm that link. The ground commander says, I need that target destroyed. I'm the one that's talking the plane to do that. Okay? Here's where attention to detail is important. When I tell an aircraft to come in on a 270 heading to drop this bomb, 269 is not good enough. 271 is not good enough. That's why attention to detail has been ingrained in me since I was 17. Okay? That's the level that we're talking about, because same thing in the Marine Corps, when a rifleman sits down and they're in a defensive position and you start having your what we call fields of fire in your sectors and how they're laid out by a clock position, that's for a reason. That's so when everybody's shooting at the same time, you're not shooting each other, and what your rifle rounds are doing are intersecting, which makes basically a cone of fire, like a wall of steel. So that's why detail is so
matters,
important. Yes, and that's why I see things other people don't see, because that's been, I'm 66 years old, that's been ingrained in me for almost 50 years. So I see great detail on things, attention to detail.
And at the end of the day, it also, your outcomes are more positive that way, right? Like you're not looking at, there are no loose ends in your house, for example. Things are, one of the things, being married to Emily as an American, a lot of like cross-cultural understanding and, her expectations of something and the way I'm raised to accept all these
little idiosyncrasies
or imperfections. My level is way, or used to be at least, and that's one of the things that we would butt heads on. It's like, is this good enough? And then she made the point that, like, look, if I walk into the kitchen and I look at a clean kitchen where everything's put away, everything is wiped down and clean, it's just like you're in a better mood automatically. You're not going to be in a better mood when there's clutter around. And it's like, yeah, that's a pretty trivial lesson to learn, but it's nonetheless pretty powerful, because now, because you've instilled that standard in me, I try to adhere to that standard, and guess what? I'm in a better mood generally in the morning. Wonder how that happens,
Well, and my wife always points out, she always tells me, she goes, okay, you're a little extreme. I said, well, I don't disagree with that. I said, that's part of my upbringing, and the jobs that I had and the things that I did brings me that level of attention to detail. And I said, I agree. And she said, and she pats me on the shoulder and she says, not everybody is like that. I said, I I understand that. And she said, so some people in your family are not going to be at that same level. And she says, you're going to have to let that go. I said, oh, I know. I said, it's really hard, but it's like I don't dwell on it. But on the flip side, because I'm that way, and it's not meant to be intentional, but it does bring them up a little bit. Just like you pointed out, they're maybe a little, you know what, maybe I shouldn't leave these here.
Yeah.
You know? They're just a little bit more conscious.
Yeah,
That's fine. That's fine. I don't expect it to be the same way I have it.
The absolute,
you know? It'd be nice as it is, but it's not gonna. And I have to live with that as well. It's like, okay, it's not 100% perfection.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you that, you know, once you set that standard, at least people are attempting to, there's an expectation that you expect the standard. You might not get the 100, but at least you get to 50, 60, 70.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting a little boost off of that.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to work ethic too, like, you know, in a sports environment or just in a job environment. It's like, this guy's working really hard. Maybe I should work a little harder. I may not work as hard as him, but like you said, if I pick it up another 10 or 15 or 20%, you know, I always say some jobs that I've had, what is it like if everybody was closer to 85 or 90% efficient rather than 45 or 50%? Holy cow. You know, it would make just a 10% improvement would make a world of difference financially for everybody, every business, you know, that took a little more pride in it. You know?
Tony, here's another hard left turn question for you. Have you ever, when you were in combat, this is something I've always wanted to ask a military person who served in combat, were you ever like scared that you might lose a limb and your life would be changed forever?
You know, I walked through those scenarios a lot. I've written my own funeral.
What do you mean, written your own funeral?
Like if I was killed, I already had all my arrangements made in a letter. You know, that's like, if I die, this is going to tell you everything you need to do. Like my obituary, everything. Okay. I've war gamed that a lot.
How do you war game that?
That's a term I use. It's like brainstorming. Okay. Oh yeah, I would think about what if I lost an arm, a leg, an eye, whatever. It's like, well, it'll be a challenge, but it's like I don't see myself rolling over and giving up.
Wow.
You know, it's just like, okay, so I lost a leg. What can I do with one leg?
Do you think that is a pervasive mindset in the military? Like everybody kind of has that. Not everybody, but
not everybody. It could be.
Is that a general sort of like I see people with prosthetic legs who've lost it in combat and things like that. I think to myself like, my God, what a life-changing experience that must have been.
Yeah.
But these guys are just pushing through it. They're just, it's not a thing. And for me, it's a thing, and I'm as an onlooker. But part of the reason I'm asking you is that.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, so I think about it all the time. It's like when you have alone time and you're thinking about, okay, what would I do with one eye? How would I do that? Or I lost this arm. You know, you kind of war game some things, you know. And I look around, and I remember when I coached, and kids would complain in practice about, you know, this and that and everything, you know. And I would see people that had special needs, or somebody in a wheelchair, and I'm like, you see what I see?
Yeah.
What are you whining about?
Right.
You know, and you got two good arms and two good legs, and you're not in a wheelchair. So, yep, you're a little bit tired, you're a little bit sore, and maybe you're a little bit mad at me, but you're going to be fine, you know. So you put those things in perspective of that, you know. That's, and again, it would be life-changing. It wouldn't be anything that would want to do.
Yeah.
But, you figure it's like any other challenge in life. You just, you're going to take it head on or you're not. And I'm just like, let's just tackle this and see where we're at.
Just courage. Just raw courage.
I mean, there's just no other way.
Yeah.
I just couldn't see that it would be, okay, I'm nothing now. But it's like, no, you still got a wife, you still got 2 kids, you got 4 grandkids. You still have a purpose.
Do you feel like the folks in the Marines or the Air Force or all these other wings of the military, they also model that behavior? They have that kind of white knuckle through this, and we're just going to get this done.
It'll vary. I think the more specialized and the more highly trained a team or a unit is, that will be pretty much at the core of it. If you have some that are not that trained or are not that straightforward or a type A, probably less likely to see that.
Type A. Wow. Well, Tony, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. It's coming up on 2.5 hours, like I was saying. If you were, there's so many other things I wanted to get into as well, but
maybe another time.
Maybe another time if you're willing to come back on the podcast.
I had a great time talking to you.
I had an awesome time, and there's a lot to unpack in this conversation for me to just chew on. Like some of these
more questions you can ask, right?
Oh, absolutely. Some of the things you say as almost like a matter of fact, you're like, yeah, you should just have pride in this, or you get on with it, or do the right thing, or like some of these things are, to me, I chew on these things, like how do you get that mindset? Like how do I translate this into a way that I could help my fellow, Indians or whoever it is. And so there's a lot of that. But it's been an absolute eye-opening, in a lot of different ways, eye-opening for me. And I appreciate you giving me the time that you had.
Sure.
I hope we can do this again as a follow-up.
Yeah.
And
let me know. We'll give it a shot.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.